They did not throw me out quietly. They did it under fluorescent lights, with a printed agenda and 32 folding chairs arranged in a neat semicircle. The Ridgewood Estates Homeowners Association meeting started at 7 sharp. By 7:05, my name was already on the screen. Agenda item 4, the HOA president said, clearing his throat. Resident compliance issue. My mother was the first to stand. She wore her pearl necklace, the one she saved for church and public confrontations. She did not look at me when she spoke. My daughter, Kylie Morgan, has been residing in our home without contributing financially, she said, her voice calm, rehearsed. She does not work. She does not pay dues, and her presence reflects poorly on the standards of this community. There was a murmur, not outrage, curiosity, the kind people reserve for reality television. Then my brother stepped in. Ryan Morgan smiled as he always did when he smelled blood. Clean haircut. Startup hoodie with a logo I had designed 3 years earlier. She spends all day on her computer, he said. No job, no clients, just games and code. We are worried about property values. Property values. I looked around the room, at the neighbors who waved at me every morning, at the man who borrowed my jumper cables last winter, at the woman whose printer I fixed for free. No one spoke up. The vote passed in under 2 minutes. 72 hours to vacate. That night, my mother stood in the kitchen with her arms crossed while Ryan Morgan leaned against the counter, scrolling on his phone. You heard them, she said. This is not a shelter. Adults contribute. I did contribute, I said. Ryan Morgan laughed. Writing code in the basement is not a contribution, Kylie Morgan. This is the real world. I packed my backpack, laptop, charger, external drive. When I reached for my bag, Ryan Morgan picked it up first and tossed it into the garage. It hit the concrete with a hollow thud. Maybe the cold will teach you the value of real work, he said. I did not argue. I walked out into the night and sat in my car, breath fogging the windshield. Ridgewood Estates looked perfect under the streetlights. Trim lawns, white fences, carefully curated success. I opened my laptop. The screen flickered, then stabilized. I logged into a private repository. Blue Trace Core Architecture. Owner, Kylie Morgan Carter. While my family was congratulating themselves for restoring order, a live dashboard updated on my screen. Freight routes recalculated. Latency optimized. A system they did not know how to maintain, quietly depended on my code to breathe. I checked my bank alerts. The standing transfer scheduled for midnight had already been flagged. I canceled it. For 5 years, a shell company I owned had been sending money into my family's accounts every month. They called it consulting revenue. A lucky break, proof that Ryan Morgan was a visionary CEO. It was me, the mortgage payment, the HOA dues, the lease on Ryan Morgan's car, all of it. I leaned back in the driver's seat. They thought they had evicted a burden. What they had actually done was default on their only creditor. I closed the laptop and started the engine. 72 hours, they said. That was generous. They had no idea the countdown had already started. I did not go back to the house. That was the first boundary I set, and it felt like cutting a live wire with insulated gloves. Clean, controlled, no sparks. I drove to a 24-hour diner off Highway 26, the kind with cracked vinyl booths and a pie case that never quite closed. I ordered black coffee and a grilled cheese I did not touch. My hands were steady, but my jaw ached from clenching. At 12:01 a.m., my phone lit up. A text from my mother. Kylie Morgan, the mortgage payment did not go through. Did you forget to transfer money from your little account? Answer me, my little account. I stared at the words until they blurred, then sharpened again. I did not respond. Another message came in, this time from Ryan Morgan. This is not funny. The HOA fee bounced too. I cannot have a late mark right now. I have investors watching everything. Investors. He still said it like it was a magic spell, like the word itself could summon money into existence. I opened my laptop and connected to my secure hotspot. The dashboard for Transit Core loaded in under 3 seconds. A black interface, green metrics, the heartbeat of a company that thought it could survive without its heart. Blue Trace did not look like a startup from the outside. It looked like confidence, a sleek website, glossy press photos of Ryan Morgan in a fitted blazer, smiling with his arm around shipping containers like he owned the ocean. He talked about efficiency and innovation as if those were personality traits. But inside, it was held together by one thing: my architecture. 3 years ago, I wrote the routing engine that turned chaos into a clean line. I built the decision tree that rerouted freight in real time when weather shut down passes and carriers tried to gouge small businesses. I did it on sleepless nights in the basement, my knees pulled to my chest, hearing my mother laugh upstairs at Ryan Morgan's CEO calls. Ryan Morgan told everyone he founded Blue Trace with grit and vision. I wrote the grit. I wrote the vision. He never understood what I did. He only understood the applause it brought him. My mother used to say, "You are so lucky Ryan Morgan is successful. He will take care of us." I used to nod because it was easier than explaining. The truth was uglier. I was the one taking care of them, and Ryan Morgan was the story they preferred. The next morning, I checked into the Kimball Inn under a holding company name. I paid for a week up front. I asked for a room facing the parking lot, not the trees. I wanted to see cars coming. I wanted warning. By noon, the calls started. My mother left a voicemail, her voice breathless and furious. "Kylie Morgan, your father is at the bank. They are saying there is not enough in the account. This is sabotage. You are sabotaging your own family. You need to come home and fix what you broke." Then my father's voice, deeper, louder, like he could still make walls shake through a phone speaker. "You think you can play games with me? You have 72 hours to get your act together. You put the money back, or you are dead to me. And I swear I will get the police involved." Dead to him. I sat on the edge of the hotel bed with my laptop open and my shoes still on. For a long time, those words would have crushed me. Not because they were true, because I had been trained to treat his anger like weather. Unpredictable, dangerous, something you had to respect to survive. But I was not in his house anymore, and I was not his child in this moment. I was a creditor watching a borrower panic. I pulled up my folder labeled North Shore Equity. 6 months ago, I bought the non-performing note on my parents' mortgage through an anonymous trust. At the time, I told myself it was protection, a way to keep them safe from Ryan Morgan's spending and my father's pride. The bank did not care who purchased it. They only cared that someone took the risk off their books. My parents received a letter saying their mortgage had been transferred to a new servicer. They probably tossed it in the junk drawer with expired coupons and church flyers. They never read anything unless it praised them. I opened the loan agreement. I scrolled to the default provisions. They were already in a fragile position. Payments made late, barely on time, always interest-heavy. A house that looked solid from the street, but was being held up by denial and monthly miracles. Miracles I used to fund. I created a new document and typed the header without hesitation. Notice of default and intent to accelerate. The words felt cold on the screen. They also felt honest. Relationships have loopholes. Families have excuses. Contracts do not. I added a clause requiring inspection of the collateral. That meant I could legally enter the property to assess the asset. I could walk through the living room where my mother hosted her little HOA coffee circles. I could step into the basement where Ryan Morgan used to toss my laundry basket aside like it was trash. I could, but I would not. I did not need to invade their space to take my power back. My phone buzzed again. A new voicemail from Ryan Morgan, and his tone was different. Less smug, more frantic. "Kylie Morgan, listen, I am willing to talk. Mom is being dramatic. Just tell me what you want. We can work something out." Work something out. He meant, give me back what you are giving us, and we will pretend you were never important. I closed the voicemail and opened another window. I logged into the Blue Trace corporate account management portal, using credentials that were still active because Ryan Morgan never bothered changing them. He never believed I mattered enough to lock out. I navigated to the licensing page. The core engine was registered under an entity that sounded boring enough to be ignored. Carter Systems IP. Owner, me. I hovered my cursor over the suspend license button. I did not click. Not yet. Anger is cheap if you spend it fast. It burns hot, then leaves you empty and embarrassed. I was not going to burn. I was going to invest. I opened a new email and typed a name I had not spoken to in years. Owen Barrett. Mason was my former co-founder on paper, my former best friend in real life, and Blue Trace's current general counsel. Ryan Morgan had hired him because Mason looked clean in a boardroom and knew how to talk to investors without sweating. Mason owed me, and he knew it. Subject line, we need to talk. Privately. Today. Then I wrote one sentence. Do you remember who actually wrote the core engine? I hit send. My hands did not shake. Outside, the Oregon sky hung low and gray, as if it was holding its breath. Inside, my laptop fans whispered steadily, and on my screen, the company that had erased me kept running on borrowed time. They had given me 72 hours. They had no idea I could end them in 17 minutes. And if you are still with me, ask yourself something. If the people who raised you only value you when you pay, when you fix, when you shrink, what exactly are you to them? Because I was about to find out what they were to me. And I promise you, the answer was going to hurt. The meeting was scheduled for 9 a.m. Ryan Morgan was 15 minutes late. That was normal. He liked to arrive after everyone else, smiling, apologizing, establishing dominance through inconvenience. He believed time bent around him because he had never been the one paying for it. I arrived early, not as Kylie Morgan Carter, the unemployed daughter from Ridgewood Estates, but as a silent line item on the agenda. Item 7, licensing review. The boardroom at Blue Trace smelled like burned coffee and ambition. Floor-to-ceiling windows. A polished table long enough to intimidate anyone without a title. Ryan Morgan's investors were already seated, murmuring to each other, scrolling through phones, pretending not to notice the tension in the air. Owen Barrett sat at the far end, legal pad closed, eyes on the door. When Ryan Morgan finally walked in, he was grinning. "Sorry, traffic," he said, dropping into the chair at the head of the table. "Let us make this quick. Big day." He launched into his presentation. Revenue projections. Expansion plans. Words like scale and synergy tossed around like confetti. The investors nodded. They always nodded when Ryan Morgan spoke. Confidence is persuasive when no one asks for proof. Then Mason cleared his throat. "Before we proceed," he said evenly, "there is a licensing matter that requires immediate attention." Ryan Morgan waved him off. "We can handle housekeeping later." Mason did not smile. "No," he said. "We cannot." I stepped forward then, placing a slim folder on the table. The room went quiet. Ryan Morgan blinked when he saw me, his smile flickering like a bad connection. "What is she doing here?" he snapped. "This is a closed meeting." Mason looked at him with something close to pity. "She owns the license," he said. I did not raise my voice. I did not need to. "For 3 years," I said, "this company has operated under a conditional license to use my proprietary routing engine. That license expired at midnight." Ryan Morgan laughed, sharp and loud. "This is a joke. You wrote some early code. We iterated. We improved it. You layered marketing on top of it," I said. "You did not improve anything." I slid the document across the table. "Termination notice," I continued. "Effective immediately." One of the investors leaned forward. "What happens if the license is terminated?" Mason answered before I could. "The system shuts down." Ryan Morgan stood up so fast his chair screeched across the floor. "You cannot do this," he said. "You will destroy the company." I met his eyes. "No," I said. "I will stop lending it my spine." At 9:17, the screens on the wall flickered. Graphs froze. Alerts stacked. The room erupted. Phones came out. Voices rose. Someone swore. 17 minutes. That was all it took. While the boardroom imploded, my phone buzzed in my pocket. A notification from North Shore Equity. Foreclosure proceedings initiated. Across town, a courier was taping a notice to the front door of the house I had been thrown out of. A house my family never owned as much as they claimed. Ryan Morgan's voice cracked. "You planned this," he said. "You planned all of this?" "Yes," I replied, because planning is what people do when they are tired of being surprised by disrespect. The meeting adjourned without ceremony. There was no shouting on my way out. No dramatic chase, just silence. 3 weeks later, Ryan Morgan filed for personal bankruptcy. The startup dissolved quietly, its press releases disappearing from the internet one by one. Ridgewood Estates removed my family's name from the directory. They moved into a smaller place on the edge of town. I never visited. I bought a house an hour north, where the roads were quiet and the air smelled like pine instead of approval. I built a workspace that faced the mountains. I let my systems run without interruption. Sometimes my phone lights up with blocked numbers. I do not answer. People ask why I did not try to fix them, why I did not sit them down and explain. The truth is simple. You cannot negotiate with people who only value you when you are useful. So I stopped being useful to them, and in the silence that followed, I finally heard myself think. If you are still here listening, let me leave you with this. The loudest people in your life are often the ones standing on what you built. They call it family. They call it loyalty. But what they really mean is access. And the moment you step away, they fall. Not because you pushed them, but because you finally stopped holding them up. If this story felt familiar, if it hit closer to home than you expected, you are not alone. A lot of us grow up thinking we owe people forever just because they share our last name. So tell me this. Have you ever been the quiet one holding everything together while being treated like nothing? And if you were in my place, would you have walked away the way I did? Or would you have handled it differently? I read every comment. And sometimes the next story starts right there.